Trying to go viral on TikTok is not how science is done. It's not how it should be done. Don't assume that you have somehow brilliantly figured out something that world experts have not figured out. Uh, Everyone wants to be, the Lorenzo's oil phenomenon, right? To that parent who finds the cure for their child that the medical experts missed, but it never works out. That just doesn't. Even the Lorenzo's oil story is wildly overblown.
For the first time in my whole life, I am crying happy tears. My daughter was diagnosed with nonverbal autism. I was told she'd never speak or even have cognizant thought. I joined groups for nonverbal adults who had AAC devices to get their side of the story and see and hear from them why they were unable to speak. Because it didn't seem like a cognitive issue. These people were smart. But they also thought that kids who couldn't hear were cognitively disabled until they found out that it was a physical limitation. But when I took this to her neuropsych and her BCBA, they said there's no research to support that. So I made the research. I sat down and I came up with a plan using neurobiology, neuropsychology, special education, early intervention. Basically learned how to rewire the brain. So I joined this community really just to listen, because it's a physical limitation. So as they got older and became adults, they were able to advocate for themselves through written word. And it's amazing hearing their stories on social media. But any stories like this, and my daughter, they were considering anecdotal, which is why I had to take it to the research and link it back, which is sad that I had to go out and do extensive neurobiological, neuroplasticity research just to have them validate my word as a mom. I had to go out and get a degree in special education so I could speak up for her and have people listen. I even made a dictionary for the people who worked with her after the shutdowns for her favorite things, what she does like, what she doesn't like, her triggers, who we are, and a dictionary, because she would use words like 1 and 10, and when she was watching a video, 10 would mean it was all done. But if you didn't really, really, really know her, you wouldn't know that. So I wrote it down. And no one in my personal life knew I was doing this research. It was all very behind closed doors because I got so much pushback from the academic community that if I was wrong, I did not want people to look at me differently. I was very scared because everyone, every single step of the way was telling me that it was impossible to do this, that she would never have cognizant thought, or that it was impossible to prove that she had cognizant thought. Everyone basically says when you have a nonverbal child, cross your fingers and hope. And I just was not okay with that. Only because I saw how frustrated she was. I could tell she was in there and she wanted to advocate for herself verbally. So I helped her with that process. She was independently led to work on these blowing exercises to work on her facial muscles because she wanted it. It was an activity she liked to do. And she was very unresponsive and non-reactive for years. So there was nothing I could do to pull her into our world until I reached into hers and got into hers with her and really understood her and how her brain worked and what she liked to do, and create novel experiences for her that she liked that helped her learn these skills in a way that worked for her.
When this happens, they prepare you for the worst and that you hope for the best. They basically say there is no fix, there is no cure, and there's nothing they can do. And this really bothered my brain because regardless, I was not okay with standing by and watching my kids struggle. To me, it wasn't about a fix. It was, why is this limitation here? Why can't she speak? What's going on inside of her body that makes her unable to speak? To fix a problem, you have to understand a problem. And I'm 100% okay with being wrong, as long as people are talking about it and trying to find the actual problem that exists. I created a plan to use neuroplasticity to help my daughter reach those milestones at the right time, so that when her facial muscles caught up, she would not have a cognitive disability to go along with it. So that is why I worked on her facial muscles and the neuroplasticity simultaneously. So we did a lot of blowing bubbles, spin wheels, and balloons, anything that she found fun that she wanted to do it. Nothing was forced. And then I gave her novel experiences and activities that I showed in my other video that's titled How I Used Academic Research to Help Kylie Go From Verbal or Nonverbal to Verbal. She went from being in the bottom 1% and qualifying for institutionalization to kindergarten with no aid.
So at the time, I was also working with other nonverbal autistic kids in a school district near me. And they all had a very high level of frustration. So my theory was that their high frustration levels were caused by their cognizance. So that they were basically trapped inside their own heads and no one was understanding them or listening to them. Because 80% of communication is nonverbal. And these kids are very nonverbally expressive through body language. Because I got laryngitis and lost my ability to talk. And for the first time in my life, I got kind of really frustrated because I couldn't speak to my kids when they were acting out. Because I'm really not the type to let anything get to me. But the academic community just doesn't want to hear it. There's no.
I have called like 3 different research institutes, and when I say that I think that I have found the physical limitation that causes nonverbal autism, no one's getting back to me. I think they think I'm pranking them. Does anyone know a neuroscientist? I need to peer review this. I need to talk to someone who's smarter than me. Please. I think neuroscientists are realizing that they have no musculoskeletal scans because they haven't looked at this as a possibility. So I am now looking for an ortho to look this over and see if they see what I see, because I don't think neuroscientists are going to help. They've done studies on their facial muscles already. There was a solid notable difference. But instead of using that information to dig deeper and do more scanning, they used it to prove that they don't understand social cues the same way and that they make inappropriate facial expressions and topics similar to that. All right, for the mamas who are asking, your first goal is going to be joint attention. So here are some of the things that I used to help. The trampolines, foldable, the high heels kept her from being able to run away in public, which was helpful, and she loved them, so it was a win-win. The paddles were the first thing to get her joint attention, and those car mirrors, I highly recommend.
Damage to these nerves could also cause the inability to speak. But why is it that we can test the nerves for hearing, for sight, know exactly what's wrong, and provide intervention for these kids at birth, and not for speech? We should be testing this. When my daughter was diagnosed, my TikTok feed became filled with autistic adults saying how badly their parents screwed up with them and how the entire medical system was failing them because none of it matched their reality. And instead of doing the I'm doing the best I can approach, I got curious and I asked them what their parents did wrong. And I listened. And I asked what the medical system was doing wrong. And I listened. And then I came up with a parenting style that would work with neurodivergent kids, being an ADHDer myself. And I combed through the academic journal database to find studies that backed up their experience. Neuro is taught that their expertise is the diagnosis. Everyone else is taught to critically think.
Happy birthday to you.
Cut the big one down.
The cases around feral children have taught us that there are critical time periods where if these kids miss out on learning certain skills, they won't acquire them. These are the facts that I used and I went off of. There are always outliers, but I was working under the assumption that I had to get her speaking by age 6. Synaptic proliferation is a time period where we are making the most connections we will ever make. We learn language through social interaction. This takes place in the prefrontal cortex. Peak synaptic production happens around 15 months. We also use our senses to hear the words, fine motor movements to make the words. Myelination in this area happens and is complete around preschool period. Timing is important because this is the time period in which forming these connections is plastic, is in neuroplasticity. We can change it during this period. So that would mean that the brain is more malleable in the way that we learn. After that, synaptic pruning starts. This makes the time period between 15 months old and 4 to 6 years old your best shot at implementing neuroplasticity because it switches from gene-driven to experience-driven and is complete around the 4th to 6th year of life. So on my daughter's 4th birthday, I realized that she couldn't blow out a candle. And I immediately just instinctually thought it's the muscles, and I went with it. I did some research on EBSCO and found facial muscle oddities appearing in the research for people with autism. So I started looking up known muscle conditions, and I came across hypotonia and hyperreflexia. And I noticed that those were the two things that we were seeing in nonverbal kids. Either there was late onset or they were born with it at birth. That's how my theory came to be. And then I used it to help her. So I know all about blind studies and how we use those to prevent participant bias. And there's a whole demographic of people who would never make it to a clinical setting. Abused women, abused children, seniors in living homes. I mean, you're getting a small demographic of people who are willing and able to make it into and participate in a clinical research study. That is not going to represent the entire population. That's a very, very specific subset of people. But my thing is, even just the knowledge that they are in a clinical setting and that they are being studied for something, in that immediate moment when they are being tested, they know something is being tested, even if they don't know which aspect. So that's going to inherently change behavior, whether we like it or not. And not only that, but we are actively paying people. So we have to account for the fact that there are a certain demographic of people who are going in just for the money. And let's say we use rats. 1/4 of the human genome is shared with rats. And they only have 70% of the same protein coding gene sequences. So specifically when we're talking about autism, it could easily be in the missing 30% here or in the missing genetic code. When comparing the two in a research study, we could be missing anything within that missing data. That's a really big variable. I noticed a pattern in the data because I'm neurodivergent myself. Causation has already been shown for hyperglycemic damage and systemic damage in the system. This includes connective tissue, muscles, and DNA damage. So while the fetus is forming, if it's in an environment that's breaking down parts on a structural level, it's going to cause malformation instead of degradation, leading to EDS, hypotonia, and DNA repair damage. I'm the mom of an autistic, and I came up with a theory on the cause of autism to help her with her very real physical symptoms. Autistic burnout mimics adrenal fatigue, and adrenal burnout can last anywhere from 3 months to 3 years. When my daughter begins to experience a burnout phase, I notice that she starts craving salt and sugar. I try my best to catch it and treat it because there are 4 stages. There's alarm alert, dismay response, meet the resistance, and burnout. So my question for other autistics is, does this align with your experience? There is no one cause of autism. I've identified the cause of each symptom. Comorbidities happen because they happen simultaneously or as a secondary symptom to an original symptom.
Quick recap. I'm identifying each cause of each symptom of autism so that we can get some symptom relief. Part of my theory is that there's a malfunction in tyrosine hydroxylase, which would create malfunctioning catecholamines. Oxytocin neurons are repressed by catecholamines, which could explain why autistics have low oxytocin, which can create impairments in social cognition, social behaviors, fear conditioning, and social memory.
Turns out it's not just tyrosine hydroxylase causing autism, it's all of the AAAHs that are BH4 dependent. PKU hydroxylase, which include Fragile X, tyrosine hydroxylase, which is the one I've been working on, and tryptophan hydroxylase. And that's all 3.
And just for confirmation, the symptoms of BH4 deficiency line up with autism. I've been breaking down tyrosine hydroxylase and all the different diagnoses within this and connected to this. And I have like 15 different diagnoses in here, which can be caused by other factors, but the only thing they have in common is that BH4. To confirm, I could only find 2 studies where they used BH4 to treat autism symptoms, and both were successful. But I don't think it was looked into because it doesn't sound like they really knew why. Down the rabbit hole we go. So BH4 actually is going to impact tyrosine hydroxylase, which will then snowball into catecholamine malfunction, which high epinephrine is linked to psychosis and schizophrenia, which microbacteria in the gut can actually generate neurotransmitters, which is why some select people see relief with this if they don't have a malfunctioning happening here. For seizures, we go over here. PKU is what's linked to the seizures. So how did I create this theory on autism and all the comorbidities? I came at it with 3 understandings when I was looking at all the research that already exists. The first one is comorbidities. By definition, for it to happen in the same person, those 2 conditions must happen simultaneously, caused by the same thing, or as a secondary condition to a primary condition. The second is it's something that we're born with. We already know that throughout our lifetime, we experience neuroplasticity, both positive and negative, that change the literal structure of our brain. So any testing done on an autistic person's brain post-birth is a testament to neuroplasticity itself, not necessarily autism. Keeping that in mind, these comorbidities are actually a progression of symptoms that are worsening over time, like Parkinson's. So I figured out chronologically.
All right, I have 2 papers now. This one's the impact of fetal hyperglycemia on autism, because glucose dysregulation is going to be a symptom of the BH4 pathway, although it can also include environmental causes like stress hyperglycemia. Anyways, this one is 30 pages long, and it includes the symptoms that line up at the bottom, mental health, all that, citations. And this one is 25 pages long. So I've got 55 pages. My brain is fried and I am burnt out. Yeah, the BH4 pathway fits every single symptom of autism and the comorbidities. What's unethical is telling a whole bunch of people that, hey, your symptoms are all over the place. The brain is just so complicated, we can't figure it out. And page 2. And page 3 on my table of contents. And we have 79 pages. It's here. It's all printed out, my theory on the cause of autism and comorbidities from subsequent glucose dysregulation impacts of autistic fetal development and the BH4 pathway. It's surreal seeing it. For context, this is everything that can go wrong when BH4 malfunctions. All of it, over a lifetime. And it just so happens to match our autism umbrella. And today I added more to the chart. I did a longer video on this, but the KYNA decrease can cause an increase in glutamate, which can cause an increase in catecholamines, which is how we get our mental health comorbidities. I should say an alternate route. Except this will be the schizophrenia and the psychosis, because it's kind of like not being able to turn the water valve off, because it stops the oxidation of glutamate and catecholamines. Not only that, but these symptoms are degenerative. Inability to control muscles, involuntary muscle movements, sensory, which makes sense because 20% of people with autism get Parkinson's and they lose their sense of smell 10 years before the motor symptoms. Degenerative because of exotoxicity and cellular damage and mitochondrial dysfunction. MTHFR takes the food that we ingest and turns it into folate. DHFR creates folate from an internal process. So DHFR helps create BH4, and DHPR will help recycle BH4 from the stuff we've already used. If there's an issue here, NOS becomes uncoupled and we have oxidative stress, which gives us our autoimmune diseases. These amino acids are all dependent on BH4, meaning everything under here is also impacted. This one's linked to seizures, this one's serotonin, and this one dopamine, giving us mental health and ADHD. When BH4 is low, NOS becomes uncoupled, and that leads to high ROS. Those are reactive oxygen species. And that leads to oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction, which is known to cause damage to joints, decreased physical performance, exhaustion overall. Our body fights off those ROS like we would a virus. And oxidative stress happens when our body can't put up a good enough fight and the ROS is winning. So until the ROS level goes down, our symptoms are just going to increase. Now, the kicker is we do need a healthy level of ROS, or our immune system isn't going to have the correct response when it needs to. They actually help in normal biologic processes. But generation of too much ROS is going to provoke the damage to our cells. I think this is what scientists are seeing when they say that our bodies are attacking itself.
So I just got out of a Zoom call with an Autism Research Center director near me. It's not going to be a quick and easy process, and I apologize for that. I had no idea the extent of what I had written until no one could read it. And it sounds like no one's really going to understand my paper in full because I created my own curriculum. Most people go for one topic on a PhD. So she gave me multiple options to submit my paper to that focus on autism research. And translational medicine is a thing. So I can professionally go get a PhD to translate medical information and create connections and do what I'm doing. And I'm super excited about that. But this is going to be a long road in trying to get someone to validate or invalidate this paper.
BH4 is low, serotonin's low, dopamine's low, glutamate's high, and GABA is low. Glutamate is the brain's speed booster. That's our green light. GABA is the red light. It slows it down. This is your corticostriatothalamic loop. It's responsible for movement, habit formation, and reward. Green is glutamate. So if green light's going faster and red light's not slowing it down, we have super excited brain, which can invoke our fight or flight response over an extended period of time, leading to tertiary adrenal insufficiency, burnout.
There are also oxytocin receptors on those glutamatergic neurons, impacting social awareness and social skills.
Also disrupted circadian rhythm, involuntary movements, which would result in stimming, and repetitive behaviors and movements. Hey guys, I figured out how to add the file to the chart directly on the website. And I've been told that it actually works now. So let me know if you have any questions. Just so everyone knows this is here, on my website with the chart, all of the resources are linked directly to the studies that I use. There's all 39 pages linked. You'll never guess what I just found. They've already done a study on autistics with BH4. All of them had varying levels of BH4 dysfunction. 70% had low BH4 and 30% had high BH4. And these two could discriminate the high and low BH4 groups. Someone else has already figured this out too, but I didn't find it on the internet. I found it through a bibliometrics application. So who is Richard Fry? Anyone know anything about this guy?
I officially have my own business, Kimberly's Educational Resources. I've had these websites for over a year now, using academic research to help teachers in both general and special education. And now I have my TikTok account where I use academic research to help science by helping people help their doctors fill the gap between research and clinical knowledge. Oh my goodness, you printed out a poster of the map. I love it.
We now have paperback and hardcover versions of my book on discovering autism and the comorbidities along the BH4 pathway. It's all about how I helped my daughter and what it was like going from discovering facial hypotonia and autism all the way up through the BH4 pathway. So I'm on the Roche biochemical pathways, and I was looking at the KYNA pathway and how that turns into glutamate, but I found this one where if there's excess tryptophan because of the lack of tryptophan hydroxylase, it would lead straight to glutamate production, which would act as a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. But that makes too much sense. Am I interpreting this correctly? I am exhausted. I've been working on this all weekend. It says all of the biochemical pathways and reactions with enzymes, cofactors, substrates, products, the whole thing, showing how they all link together. So what does all this mean and why is it useful? Right now, there is a ton of overlap in what does what in the scientific research as far as autoimmune goes. Isolating each individual aspect and how that impacts the system as a whole helps us identify how to fix something when it does go wrong.
I'm so excited to hear that you're coming. We talked to the director and got our own coupon code, so I really hope to see more of you there. We're going to the MAP Spring 2024 Functional and Translational Medicine Conference.
Guess who's a speaker at this conference that I'm going to? I don't know if anyone remembers, a while back I was looking at trying to talk to the guy who had used BH4 as a treatment for autistics, and it worked. This guy, he was amazing. He suggested that I submit my paper to his journal, but my paper was too long. I couldn't shorten it enough. I mean, the theory on autism and the comorbidities was never going to be short enough for a paper. I'm really excited to pick his brain and see what he thinks of the new map. Here's where it gets complicated. This is our defense system against pathogens. In autism, it's genetically triggered. When it's triggered, certain functions shut down. One of these appears to be our ability to activate vitamins in the typical pathways. However, this X right here, that's where the actual autism happens. An enzyme activation turning on the transamination pathway that turns what's called amino acids that are supposed to make dopamine and serotonin into glutamate. So instead of making dopamine and serotonin, we get speedy brain. The changes in glutamate level is going to impact what's called the corticostriatal thalamic loop that controls movement, habit formation, and reward. It also links up to the sensory parts of our brain. Over time, that speedy brain can wear out, causing Alzheimer's. The shutting down of the neurotransmitters also causes high cortisol, which leads to something called stress hyperglycemia, which impacts our ability to make insulin, which explains the diabetes and the insulin resistance. And then the NOS uncoupling that comes with this over here explains the autoimmune. The longer the system is dysregulated, the worse the wear and tear is over time. That's why we get the autoimmune and neurodegenerative diseases as we age. The wear and tear is from an allostatic load. It is not meant to be dysregulated for a long period of time. This is supposed to protect us only during times where we have pathogens, viruses, bacteria, that kind of thing. So I just got off work and I listened to our podcast for the first time. It was so good. We went over supplements and my backstory, my book, and a brief overview of my map. When I did the podcast, I was on this map. Now we're here. I'm so excited for what the future has in store for this. I love doing podcasts. They're a lot of fun, getting to talk to someone one-on-one about all of this. And I think I'm going to start doing lives more. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear what you all think.
Our chart has made it to the NIH. They're now asking for autistics to publicly comment on our comorbidities, specifically requesting the mental health, physical, and autoimmune comorbidities that we've been talking about. So we have clearly gotten their attention. Guys, I did it. I'm published. I have a DOI link and everything. Huge shout out to Alex for mentioning me in his publication. Check it out. It's amazing. This is a big statement, so I'm going to walk you through how I figured it out. Okay, so we're going to go on UniProt. This is where people go to find chemical reactions. So we'll type in MTHFR, because that's the protein we're looking at, not mother. Okay, and it's going to kick back a whole bunch of results. Now we want to make sure we click on MTHFR human, because we are humans looking at human. Okay, so it's going to give us the protein, the gene, all the things, and this is the catalytic activity. So this is going to be the recipe that we're looking at. And this is the only one it's involved in. Sorry, it's hard doing this around my laptop. Or my phone. Okay, so here we go. Methionine synthase human. Okay, so here's the MTR function. This is the one that takes the methylfolate and turns it into THF through the homocysteine cycle.
Low NOS makes whole body breakdown and activates body defense system. Also causes DNA damage. Low AGMO causes the endocannabinoid system to not work. Low NOS also makes our hormones go haywire. Activated defense system makes our neurotransmitters go wonky, leading to super fast processing speeds that break our brain and cause our brain to rewire itself as a workaround. It also makes our fight or flight hormones go wonky. It makes us selfless or selfish, thus unable to make decisions based on self or unable to make decisions based on others. The fact that this happens over our entire lifetime changes how our body responds to stress because it's worn down over time. Oh, and our circadian rhythm is screwed.
This is my version of a jigsaw puzzle. I used to do jigsaw puzzles with my dad all the time growing up. And my first one was this one down here. It was just the links between the different things, the correlation. And then I found the biochemical pathways proving causation for the links for the whole body. And this one's for the gene mutations. That's showing causation. So if you know you have this gene mutation, you know this part of the pathway is not working for you. And so on and so forth. This is the causation map. This is how you know, okay, if I have this mutation, this is the cause of XYZ symptom for me specifically.
There is now change petition to get me a PhD. The things I do when I'm bored. So I originally created this as kind of a joke, but I've been tinkering with it and I kind of like the idea. So I've changed the name of the change petition to peer review the neurodivergent biochemistry thesis paper, because that's really the goal of what I was trying to do behind the PhD. I'm realizing a lot of people will take a snap judgment based off of the title and not dig deeper into why I am pursuing them to look into giving me a PhD, because then they would have to review my paper as a thesis in that form prior to giving any type of PhD. So really the goal is peer review on the paper. All right, let's do a behind the scenes in my mind map. It's my version of a jigsaw puzzle. I just take the academic journal database and turned it into a jigsaw puzzle, and I spend my day poking around in there and filling in the gaps in my puzzle. Go on UniProt, and then I pull the information from here and put it on the chart. This is all the impact of the neurotransmitter dysregulation, all the neurotransmitters within the pathways, ascending and descending tracks in the brain, and then corticostriatothalamic loop, of course, the sensory perception that creates a reality of hearing, sight. And then as I find new information, I know where it goes. Like if I find another receptor, I'll put a box in here because that's where my receptors go. If I find information on neurotransmitters, I put it in the boxes. It is very much like a jigsaw puzzle where I have the outer ring finished and I probably have about 3/4 of the way done. And now I'm just kind of filling in the rest of it. So now that I have all of the information that I need to have, filling it all in is just pretty easy. I just pull from DOIs and I put it, like here's all the autoimmune, autoinflammatory response information, post-translational modifications. Yeah, and that goes towards the biochemical pathways. It's a lot of work, but it's my baby. It's my jigsaw puzzle. I was invited as a special guest and I'm really excited. I'm getting a little nervous because I don't know what to bring with me. I don't know what I'll need. I don't know what to wear. I don't know, dress code. I just picked up my business cards and they're so cute. I love how they turned out. I'm at my hotel room. So I just got back from the bar. It went really well and I'm really glad that it went down. Thank you everyone for the advice. I actually ran into Dr. Fry, for those of you who have been longtime followers, and he's brilliant. We had an awesome conversation. I met a friend and I'm really excited to see how tomorrow goes. All right, we're on break now, so update on the first few speeches. That was painful. It was genuinely painful. Because they did all these speeches about how, what is the common denominator? And a whole bunch of, a question mark in the middle, it's neurotransmitter dysregulation systemically, because that's what can impact the eyes, the vision, and the action potential, and muscle tone, and the executive function, all at the same time.
And then when we get into the autoimmune, I'm not looking forward to that side of things today. Just coming up next, because what's the common denominator? BH4. BH4 is the common denominator. Like, it's... And then they have videos of these kids in physical therapy, like 24/7. And spelling things out, a non-speaking conference, spelling things out on a board with letters. Isn't it easier than teaching them this stuff all day just to regulate the neurotransmitters? Like, what? You could tackle it all at the same time. You don't have to have these kids in therapy all day. But I can't say that because I haven't earned my place yet to say it. And who am I to come on here and tell people they're helping kids wrong? So I'm just kind of sitting here with my mouth shut because I need to earn my way in with these people. I'm glad I made a friend that I can tell this stuff to, kind of. Yeah, this conference is stressing me out more than I thought it would. Now I'm stuck in the bathroom because the lady who hosted this and some women she was with decided to confront me in the middle of the room I was thanking them for the conference. To tell me that they're not thrilled that I said that non-speaking kids deserve to have their neurotransmitters regulated instead of being in physical therapy all day. And they think they're not in physical therapy all day. I'm a special education teacher. These kids are in different therapies all day. Why wouldn't we want to regulate their neurotransmitters instead? I stand on it. I'm just so sick of getting bullied. I just said I stand on it, that they deserve their neurotransmitter regulation, and that they probably should have done this privately and not in the middle of the room. The problem is I walked into politics with non-speaking moms I didn't realize I was walking into. The thing is, I am a mom who has successfully treated their non-speaking child using actual science. And I was trying to help, genuinely trying to help. And I'm very confused why they don't want to hear what I have to say, given they're also trying to help. They're currently non-speaking teenagers, young adult children. I got ambushed intentionally in public. Your body sends information to your entire system using neurotransmitters. If they're off, your body's disconnected. It's not communicating properly. I don't know. I think it's very telling that they invited me as a special guest as someone who has helped their non-speaking child, and then they brush off everything I have to say. This is the director of the conference, and I just want to highlight this comment so you guys see what I'm dealing with. Extremely unprofessional. And yes, I'm hiding in the bathroom because my grandpa just had a seizure and we're looking at end-of-life care. So I'm a little busy dealing with that right now. This is completely unprofessional. I had valid scientific and educational feedback on your program for the spellers. This is a fine motor movement. Touching a specific point on a board is fine motor, and you know they already struggle with that. That's like making neurotypicals run a marathon just to communicate. It's cruel. I'm glad that they finally have a voice, but AAC exists for that purpose. It's more sensitive to fine motor because you're only touching one time per word. My grandpa just passed away. And thank you. I just got off the phone with someone from bioinformatics for a graduate level certificate. It sounds absolutely amazing, so that way I'd be able to prove I know what I'm doing with the data and that everything checks out. And now instead of being able to do it by hand, I'd be able to do it with actual tech. The problem is, the whole certificate is a little over $10,000, and admissions I'd have to apply by July 15th. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. I am so grateful. I have no words. It looks like I'm going to the class. All right, let's talk applied biochemistry and how your body takes nutrients from the food you eat and uses it to keep your body functioning. These are your body's biochemical pathways. They all work together like the inside of a clock, and they are constantly in motion. Think of it like a well-oiled machine. The nutrients that you ingest through food are what fuel these gears. Each gene in your DNA creates a protein that acts as a gear in this pathway. And what keeps these gears moving
is the kinetics behind the proteins turning each nutrient that you eat into the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And then those products that are created from that and act on different receptors that control your ion channels. This is what keeps your body functioning. For example, these pathways will create your fight or flight hormones, norepinephrine and epinephrine, that acts on adrenergic receptors, which controls your heart rate and your blood pressure. These pathways also create acetylcholine, which controls action potentials to your muscle to make them move. Your brain's constantly going, you're thinking things, you're blinking, you're breathing, your body's poised however you want it to be poised, laying down, standing up, walking, running, whatever you're doing. Your heart is beating, you're feeling things, you're hearing things, you're seeing things every second. This is a constant running clock. So when you ingest anything, supplement, food, drugs, anything, it's going to have a point of impact on the pathway and then follow it in that chain link reaction, wherever point of impact is and beyond, until you excrete it out. Unless it's fat soluble. And that's how your body works. All right, I created a new visual representation of the biochemical pathways and how your body functions. Your circadian rhythm, that's kind of like your daily time clock for what your body does at each time every day, is controlled by visual input. So it's controlled by your eyes. And it basically sits on top of a teeter-totter between defending yourself against pathogens and clearing dead cells and cellular repair, which happens at night. And then the clearing the dead cells and defending against pathogens is the day. All of these processes require fuel, essentially, and it's fueled by nutrition, the things that you eat. Your genetics essentially lay out the blueprint for how this will work. Your nutrients enter one of the gears here, and each gear on this little turn dial is going to be one gene, because each gene has the instructions for creating one protein. And these are going to be chain link impacts, so the nutrient's going to come in, it's going to go to the next step, substrate to product. That product turns into substrate for the next reaction, and then the next one, and the next one, each fueled by one protein, which is one gene. Eventually, these products that are created in these cycles attach to receptors that control your ion channels. And these control how your body functions. It controls brain activity and your arm moving and blinking and breathing and all the things. Now, the goal is homeostasis. However, there are times where there will be something called oxidative stress, and that's where the scales are tipping. When there's ROS, it's going to clear the dead cells and the pathogens, and it cannot actually cause too much damage. If they're tipped too far, then we need the DNA repair and cellular repair and in an endless loop. So we need that to be at homeostasis and level.
So I've updated my change petition to accurately reflect where we're at now in this process. If anyone does want to help, this is the best way we can do it. Putting public pressure on an institution to look this over will get us a faster way to do a check yes or check no. I've had thousands of professionals online look this over, agree to it, and I'm starting to do meetings with different professionals, and I'm working with the clinic now. However, a large institution like Stanford will have the resources available to them where they can really help this take wings in a way that me individually doing this one by one, I can't.
These are the switches that can make you sick. You have a regulatory system that turns it on and off, 5 different toggles, and allostatic load if these toggles don't switch back down to off. Each one of these toggles, if left on, will cause oxidative stress. You have a regulatory system that has a set point, let's say your body temperature, where it's supposed to stay at 98.6, about, and then a sensor to detect whether or not that threshold has been met, an error detector that decides whether or not that threshold has been met. The effector delegates the corrective action, and the controller implements the corrective action. The immune system can be triggered by any pathogen or environmental factor. All of these toggles, when turned on, will produce ROS, lead to the release of peptides, add PTMs, post-translational modifications, onto proteins, and activate transcription factors to tell the rest of the body, hey, something's wrong. So we got to make new stuff to handle it. And then what would turn it back off after a pathogen would be that pathogen no longer being there. Metabolites, these would be like your nutrients and your ATP for energy. If they are too low or too high, it will trigger the regulatory system. And what toggles it off
when that is set back to homeostasis and you have all the metabolites and energy you need at the right amount. Physical stress. When your body's under physical strain, it can trigger the regulatory system. How does that turn off? It turns off when your body's no longer under that physical strain. Toggle 4 is psychological stress. What turns it on? Emotional distress from personal losses, work, pressure, anything. Up next is genetic. Any of these switches can be turned on genetically because your proteins are like the little workers that control all of these systems. So if you have a protein that's not working, it's going to trigger your regulatory system. How do you turn that off? This is the question. Currently, what we have available is genetic counseling, targeted therapies, and lifestyle adjustments until we can get protein therapy to plug the hole in the boat, if you will. And then if these toggles are left on too long, you get allostatic load, and that's where chronic illness will come in. With neurodivergence, we're in the last two because we are genetically triggered and it's not turning off. That's why we get the comorbidities. I made a new website that's easier to navigate. The main page has the important things, my journey, Cliff Notes version, understanding the 5 toggles of allostasis, resources link, and a take action link. Where you can support or help spread the word and advocate with us by signing the change petition, or there are donation options. And here's the resources page. I will have pamphlets coming out soon. There are links to my social medias where I do my breakdowns, upcoming courses, and links to my research articles on ResearchGate. I also have a page about what I did, how I helped my daughter, how I started advocating for physical testing for people who can't speak, how I was told that it doesn't impact enough people, so it wasn't worth testing. And that's what got me linking in more comorbidities. And as I was linking those in, I discovered the pattern in genetics. I do have a news option where you can join to get updates on progress if you don't want to have to sift through my 20 million social media videos. A partners page, which we don't have anyone yet. This website just got started today. Let me know what you think. I published my paper. I was starting to nitpick at it, and I was like, I'm just gonna publish. So it's up on ResearchGate. You can find the link on my website. You go to About and Resources, and then scroll down to the research articles, and it's the last one right there. I got accepted to UW-Madison. And so begins the real-world transition. I'm still waiting to hear back from the lawyer in my area. I'm going to talk with him about my intellectual property, what that means for going to school. I actually just got Kylie's physical letter in the mail, informing me that she is no longer functionally eligible for services through the Children's Long-Term Support Services Plan. This is the plan in my state for children with significant developmental, physical, or emotional disabilities. The whole goal is so that they can stay at home instead of having to go into an institution to be cared for. It is not easy to get into. And our caseworker expressed to me that it is not typical to come off in the way that Kylie did. Typically, when a kid comes off of this, it's because they barely test as not being functionally eligible, and it's a whole to-do because parents aren't getting the services that their child desperately needs and that many children need because there are many disabled children. It's an amazing program, and it really helped us in a time of need. And for reference, this is where we started. Kylie was unable to communicate with the world around her. She was completely unaware when you were saying her name at the age of 4. The only way she communicated was non-verbally. And when she was diagnosed here, this was her improved. Because this, I believe, happened in April, and I started treatment with her on her facial muscles in October of that year. So this is why I use the word cure. Supports are technically the accommodations and modifications used in IEP plans used to support the child. There is no other way to translate not functionally eligible for services. I'd love it if we could come up with a new word for it because cure has a connotation rooted in eugenics, which I don't love for lots of reasons. But yeah, this is our situation. I've had so many people reach out asking what my new book, Neurotoggle, is about. Neurotoggle is all about unlocking the power of neuroplasticity to support neurodivergent learners specifically. Neuroplasticity is the brain's unique ability to rewire, reorganize, and restructure itself when presented with new environments and novel concepts, ideas, and learning. And there is a science behind this. Neuroplasticity happens for all learners. However, because of the unique changes with glutamate in the brain circuitry, it's especially useful for neurodivergent learners, and something we can really utilize and lean into. This is something I learned about through my coursework at UW Superior, where I graduated with honors in education and special education studies with a minor in instruction strategies. My daughter's nonverbal autism diagnosis completely changed the trajectory of my education. Everything I did became an effort to help her go from silence to speech, and neuroplasticity was central to that. I'm all done with exams, so I put my videos back up. However,
I've been tagged so many times in this telepathy and nonverbal thing, and it is so annoying. Nonverbal kids are not telepathic. They're hypersensitive to microexpressions and nonverbal cues because they can't use mouth words. And I know because that's how I communicated with my daughter. I communicated nonverbally with her. Picture Grizzy and the Lemmings. You're not reading their minds when you're watching that show. They're overexpressive with their nonverbal cues. Communication is 80% nonverbal. It is not hard to understand what someone wants or needs nonverbally. There are plenty of cues. I won't even watch it. I'm just annoyed by the title. I should have known that the spellers were behind the telepathy tapes. Is there nothing they won't do to make money off their children? And we're really going to believe videos they put out when they claim 0 expenses, 0 net income, 0 donations on their taxes?
this is a letterboard and spelling to communicate. See how the practitioner holds onto the board? They were debunked for reasons similar to Ouija boards. If you don't remember what Ouija boards are, they're these things. People use them to talk to people who have passed away. There's this effect that happens when you're anticipating an outcome where you move subtly, whether consciously or subconsciously, to influence the outcome. This is why spelling boards have been debunked. That's a bold lettering. That had many reasons.
Who is Thomas Evans? My mother just texted me this book. Neurotoggle, Unlocking Potential in Neurodivergent Minds with Neuroplasticity Techniques. This is mine. What?
I was only able to afford one trademark class. However, the application is now submitted for Neurotoggle to be trademarked for books. And then hopefully as more people buy Neurotoggle, I can generate income to expand into workshops and workbooks and whatnot.
The plagiarized version of my book just came in the mail. Reference, this is mine.
No publishing page or nothing. Throws out random studies with no citation.
A lot of people ask me why I lean into the skepticism of what I've done, and that's because that's where I want the conversation to start. I'm not trying to sell this. I want the conversation to start around, is this scientifically accurate? Not, oh my gosh, she's right. It shouldn't start there. It should start at skepticism. The science is sound, and I want people to see that. And when I helped Kylie, I had so many people skeptical and telling me I needed to just accept the situation for what it was, and I needed to realize that she would never be capable of cognizant thought, much less speech. And I was right, and it worked, and it helped her. And now I just want to know, can this help more people? Can this bring value to anyone else? And I think that's a valid and rational question to ask. I've had some questions about what I think of his study on folinic acid in nonverbal children. So let's go over his study. Cliff Notes overview: this study does not say that these kids were nonverbal before and verbal afterwards. 48 kids participated, 25 were given placebo, 23 were given high doses of folinic acid. So this is a very small sample. The folinic acid was given to these children at home by their families. And so parents were then asked, hey, did you miss any doses? I don't know what to make out of this study. It doesn't appear to be a night and day difference. Talking was completely nonverbal before and is, wow, verbal afterwards. This study does not say that.
Genuinely, I wish I had met these people in person, including Dr. Fry. I used to really look up to him. When it comes to the folinic acid and nonverbal autism study, they put numbers on the board and they don't explain how they got them. And it's not kids going from nonverbal to verbal. There's a group of autism moms that are bulldozing this autism research in the direction they want it to go in. The narrative that they're pushing specifically is vaccines cause autism.
They're pushing telepathy in nonverbal autistics. It's the same group of people doing this. They're also in cahoots with MedMaps, Medical Academy of Pediatric Special Needs. By the title, you'd think that it was well established. It is, in fact, not. Yeah. So at these conferences with MedMaps, they're handing out pamphlets about autism and vaccines. They're megadosing with supplements with no research behind it on the long-term effect. It's just cherry-picked anecdotal studies. And biochemistry, it takes extended dysregulation to cause any adverse events. So these short-term studies aren't going to cut it. This is going to end very badly. I'm absolutely livid. 2 of the authors in that folinic acid in autism study own the patent for detecting the autoantibodies in the study. Picture of the patent for proof. For I went on live media and said there's no money to be made, and that's why the FDA is not approving this treatment. No.
The study on folinic acid in nonverbal kids was terminated for non-compliance. Study data cannot be validated by the sponsor. What does this mean? I'm genuinely so concerned about this group of parents and what they're doing to autism research.
People are starting to replicate my work, the BH4 pathway and autism. I was so excited until I realized that they're actually trying to claim credit for the BH4 pathway and autism. There's no way with the systemic review they didn't come across my papers on ResearchGate, or my years of content, or my websites. They're claiming originality, using my concepts. The brain circuitry in the corticostriathalamic loop, the oxytocin dopamine, the BH4 shunt, all of it. So I just got a call back from the state representative's office about my hypothesis on the cause of autism and the comorbidities. So he asked me to tell him a little bit more about it, so I'm going on this whole spiel. And I'm like, yeah, it was just recently stolen from Brazil, actually, so it's been peer-reviewed. And he's like, wow, that would be amazing for everyone if you're right. And I'm like, yeah, so I really don't know what the next steps are. I've had thousands of researchers reach out and say this sounds accurate, but there's no actual institution that's job it is to check yes and then actually do the next steps once the answer is found. So I was like, if I could get some help setting up something like that. He's like, okay, I'll do some digging and see what I can find. I'm like, thanks. I guess we'll see where it goes.
I got all A's last semester going to school at graduate level courses for bioinformatics. I had a meeting with my advisor. We discussed it. I was going to start applying for PhD programs this fall. Being plagiarized and the academic community's response to me being plagiarized has me completely put off from pursuing that PhD.
Meet BioToggle, the epigenetic switches. I've officially trademarked BioToggle. Cellular stress is what turns your genes on and off, creating those epigenetic changes to proteins. And I created a framework to explain them. I've had such a hard time sitting on the name for this framework. I created it a year ago, but you have to have it in commerce to be able to trademark it. And I couldn't afford it yet, so I finally just did it, and we have BioToggle, the name for my allostatic toggles framework. Meet BioToggle, the epigenetic switches. I finally just trademarked. Cellular stress is what triggers the epigenetic changes to proteins. It turns your genes on and off, and I created a framework to explain how this process works. I'm so excited to finally be able to release it. I've been holding on to this for a year. I had to save up to trademark, and it has to be in commerce before you can trademark it. I'm so excited to finally be able to share it. Please only buy this if you're from the US. I'm still working out sales taxes in other countries. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to feel. I don't know what's happening. I told my local state representatives about everything that I did and how I may have figured out the root cause of autism and that it's been looked by researchers all over the world who have confirmed it. I got a call from someone in DC. I told them that Brazil plagiarized me, because they did. And now they're getting a mass amount of data on the biomarkers of autistics and cross-referencing them to figure out the root cause of autism. And maybe it has nothing to do with me. Not everything's about me. This very well could be unrelated. But I am internally panicking because the only way you can cross-reference to figure out a joint root cause is by looking at biomarkers and overlaying it on top of a biochemical pathway. For example, that's how I did it with the BH4 shunt. I was able to see, okay, precursors of these are high.
Everything down here is low. That cannot happen unless there's a shunt, because there is no other pathway that makes these things. And once that's blocked, this has to go elsewhere. Also, all the comorbidities that align with these things being low and these things being high are present. That's how you cross-reference to show something like that. I don't know in what other context that's possible. This is how the Matilda effect happens in real life. A woman comes in, does something like figure out the cause of autism, and I should be grateful people are following suit. I'm complaining when I just want to be cited. They're treating like I didn't give them an idea, I did the work. This is being stolen out from under me from multiple countries, and I'm just supposed to be grateful.
I didn't just build this because this is what it looks like. I build this because this shows the kinetics, the flow of it. Our nervous system is hooked up to our circadian rhythm, so daily it goes around like a clock, and it goes like this on a 24-hour basis. And then if there's a pathogen that comes in, it throws a wrench in there, and then no matter what stage your circadian rhythm's at, your body has to handle that. Same thing on the cellular repair. If cellular repair is needed, it throws a wrench in there and your body has to handle that as well. And then it even changes due to metabolic demands. Your body actually uses the energy that it stores during the day at night. So if you use more energy, you're back in this pathway, like when you exercise. So it's just all moving together, and the BH4 linchpin is fascinating to me because not only does it change all of the pathways, it's sensitive to changes in all of the pathways: cellular repair, the immune system, metabolites being off, and the nervous system being triggered. It's just so intricate and awesome and fun to learn about. Not so fun to live in when you have a genetic wrench in here, but yeah. So now I'm fine-tuning my hypothesis on the pathology of autism and the comorbidities to show the kinetic flow. So yeah, they finally did start taking me seriously enough to plagiarize me. They tested my hypothesis without saying where it came from, and it did check out and it passed peer review. It's nice to know I'm right, but it is very frustrating to have it happen this way. It wasn't done in good faith. No one contacted me. I've had my papers up on ResearchGate for years, or in video for years. ResearchGate, well over a year.
Honestly, I'm not upset at UW Superior. I reached out to them. That's my alma mater. They're such a small school that they probably couldn't help me, but UW-Madison, they have an entire autism research center there that gave me a door slam, told me they don't even have biochemistry experts as part of that, and they do. I have enough momentum behind my hypothesis that I was able to crowdfund enough money for me to go within 24 hours, and they still dropped the ball. They couldn't help me. They wouldn't help me because I didn't have the credentials they wanted me to have. And then it got plagiarized internationally. This is why I don't claim my credentials even, because they didn't help me.
I think the whole thing with RFK Jr. is weird. I don't know, this is my timeline compared to his. I called DC March 7th, a representative of mine over there. Got a call back April 4th. I told them the story about how I got plagiarized in Brazil, how I had this hypothesis, how I helped my daughter. They said, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help. 6 days later, RFK Jr. is ordering HHS to determine the cause of autism by September. The idea is to get all the existing research that's difficult to obtain and fragmented and put it all together. Sound familiar yet? Reactions from the public, absolute outrage, rightly so, because what are you doing? What's his excuse? He was referring to people with profound autism. We're doing this for people with profound autism. Any of this sound familiar? It's the whole reason why I did that for my daughter. Now I guess he's walking it back, saying it's going to take another 6 months. They're going to replicate studies that look like they have been sound. I don't know, weird to me. If it does have anything to do with me, I don't appreciate it.
I have a lot of people on my page right now who are wondering how I went from the work on discovering autism and the comorbidities along the BH4 pathway that I've been publicly disseminating online since 2023 to neurodivergent biochemistry as a whole and my extended hypothesis in autism and the comorbidities being genetically induced allostasis in the BH4 shunt. And the answer is because I started looking for what causes the BH4 shunt that leads to the autism and the comorbidities framework. And once I figured out that this was a redox-sensitive protein shift, it led me to allostasis, which is your body's stress response. It's kind of like a turbo mode state that your body goes in to restore balance when cellular stress triggers it.
And that's how I got to the genetically induced allostasis and the BH4 shunt hypothesis. But I own IP in my hypothesis at all stages of development. So those of you who are new on my page, this paper in Brazil plagiarized an earlier version of my hypothesis, and plagiarism is when you leave a source uncited, and I am the creator of this framework. And this ultimately led to my neurodivergent biochemistry framework, because I realized allostasis can either be situationally triggered, chronically stuck, or genetically locked. When cellular stress triggers any of these biotoggles, and once those biotoggles are flipped, all of them recalibrate as part of a cohesive effort for the body to restore balance, because all of these systems need to be shifting gears so that they can handle and resolve the source of stress. There are epigenetic changes because different proteins need to function in different pathways and different ones need to be conserved for safety. The nervous system has to communicate differently during stress. Cellular repair happens to restore the body after stress damages things. Metabolism changes to meet the changes in biochemical demand throughout the body, and the immune system is active as a sort of monitoring system and helping to resolve the stress. And when your body's in this state for too long, especially during development, because your body prioritizes survival over development, it's going to have developmental impact. It's going to impact the way that your body's functioning, and it can cause wear and tear on the body over time from something called allostatic overload. And this leads to comorbid conditions, accelerated age-related diseases, and different phenotypes depending on all those factors. Neurotoggle second edition is published on Etsy. An interview on Amazon. It usually takes like 24 hours. So what is Neurotoggle? Neurotoggle is a neuroplasticity-based instructional framework. The core principle is that each behavior and skill is a neural circuit that can be refined through neuroplasticity using established teaching pedagogy. This is pedagogy that's already known and well-tested and loved. It's just reorganized into a cohesive framework through a neuroplasticity lens. Guess what my dad just sent me? Coming out of Princeton and the National Institute of Health, there's a paradigm shift for autism research. So anyways, we now have autism as an allostatic state flyer and a neurodivergent biochemistry flyer. The autism as an allostatic state of existence flyer goes over my hypothesis, the allostatic state of existence, what that means, how it happens, how epigenetics plays into it, how that impacts development, function, and wear and tear over time, leading to autism and the comorbidities. And then the BH4 shunt and MTR shunt as major redox protein shifts. And that leads us to neurodivergent biochemistry, the unifying principle of everything I've learned. How those redox protein shifts can lead to neurodivergence and the comorbidities because of the biotoggles, either being situationally flipped, chronically stuck, or genetically locked, leading to the varying phenotypes. Of course, with autism being the genetically locked because it's lifelong, it doesn't turn on and off. These redox protein shifts are prioritized over developmental processes such as brain circuitry development, which is why I created Neurotoggle, and that helped Kylie. It overrode that process and allowed for her to build the brain circuitry that she needed during critical stages of development. Meet the biodials. I created a visual aid to help understand the kinetic flow of our biochemistry that maintains life over time. This would be over days, nights, seasons, years, and development through age. The biotoggles are the 5 things that can throw a wrench in there. It's up on Etsy now. Our proteins have a constant internal flow to them. That's why our neurotransmitters are always flowing and our blood's always pumping and we're always breathing. Our proteins perform the jobs in our body that make that possible. It's constantly managed by circadian rhythm, our circadian cycles, and developmental age cycles over time. The biotoggles are things that can throw a wrench in there, disrupting the biochemical flow state and putting us in turbo mode so that we can make sure that we restore that chemical flow state. Because if you don't, it's game over. Your body has a regulatory system set to tell when there are breaches and activate effectors to restore that balance. This includes epigenetically regulated redox-sensitive protein shunts, leading to a more cohesive understanding of the exact impact of allostasis. Stanford just used my framework without citation too. I have receipts. I created a treatment plan for the mechanism that causes the specific autism symptoms within my autism and the comorbidities framework as a whole. November of 2023, I got an email from someone at the Stanford Neurodiversity Project. I have confirmation they're aware of my work. They created a drug that targets a specific location within the corticostratothalamic loop. This controls movement, habit formation, and reward. This is the physiological functional location that's impacted by the BH4 shunt, leading to classic autism symptoms in my framework. They used my work to find a cure, and I was not cited. But I am right.
How to get at least somewhat
better when you
If he genuinely comes out saying folinic acid, he is going to turn into a laughingstock. I kid you not. Fry's study was terminated for non-compliance and put on a full clinical hold by the FDA. 2 of the co-authors own the patent for the autoantibody test, so they get paid every time someone takes it. The whole study is an advertisement that was illegally done from the sounds of it, with a cancer risk as a cherry on top.
The folinic acid and autism study never should have been published. That was academic misconduct. Trump is set to come out in support of leucovorin, which is folinic acid, today as an autism treatment. UAMS was the study sponsor. They were not able to monitor the study or resolve outstanding queries, so it was put on a full clinical hold by the FDA and terminated for non-compliance. So I contacted UAMS, and they said they have no record of the hold ever being lifted by the FDA, nor of the determination of his ability to publish the data. I can't even find a university that he's affiliated with anymore to actually email about this, so I ended up contacting HHS, and I don't know what next steps would even be, but this study should not have been published. So I called the office of the Dean of Faculty at Princeton, and it's genuinely just so awkward because I'm like, I wasn't expecting to be here. The overlap is undeniable, so I reported it. They said it's under review, and I was like, well, do I get in on the process of that? She's like, we will let you know when we come to our decision. And I'm like, okay. So awkward. I did this as a business. I wasn't expecting to get plagiarized by Princeton, but they put my hypothesis in their preprint, said they tested it, and scrubbed it for the Nature version. I call my methodology the jigsaw puzzle methodology because you're taking existing research and putting it together to come to a conclusion. The co-author of this study actually even used that same terminology. Said it was like a jigsaw puzzle. So I'm on the phone with this lady and I'm like, she's like, what is your affiliation? Like, what is your ranking, basically? And I'm like, I don't have one. Like, I own a business. I was not, but there is overlap. I basically did a dissertation on my own because I needed to speed through it to explain my neuroplasticity helped Kylie and see if it could help more kids like her. This was just the logical way that it went. I did a literature review to see what we knew about autism and how they link to the comorbidities, because being nonverbal is a comorbidity. I came up with a method to figure out what the links were, and they were biochemical links, and came to my conclusions with the autism and the Comorbidities Theory and neurodivergent biochemistry. And everyone was telling me you have to do the statistics version, and I'm like, that's not going to work, because the way I found this was functional logic. And then Princeton came out with a statistics version that they thought would be better. And it's not going to replace the functional logic. We now have a change petition for testing the physical structures that produce speech sounds in people who can't speak. I had a parent asking me to set this up, so here we go. I'm at the Capitol. I just had my meeting, and it went well. She was extremely nice. She's a staffer of my state representative. So we're talking, and I kind of give her the rundown. I show her my laptop, all the documentation. I zoom in on my map. I show her what I did. I tell her about my daughter. I show her videos of my daughter before and after. And like these nonverbal kids need actual testing. I went to all these links to show why neuroplasticity worked for my daughter, and the physical speech mechanisms have never been tested ever globally in kids who can't speak. And it's just unfortunately so politicized because when RFK found out about what I did, he decided to claim he was going to do the same thing 6 days after that phone call. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. All I want is to get these kids access to testing. Why can't we get these kids access to testing? They clearly need it. It's never been done. This should have been done decades ago. We know that when you can't see or hear, it's an actual physical mechanism. It's not the brain. When you can't physically speak, it's the speech mechanism. It's the nerves attached to the actual production of the sounds. So she's going to help send some emails, and hopefully, fingers crossed, but this is probably going to be a long battle of advocacy and trying to convince people to care. My 2 epigenetic frameworks are the core of neurodivergent biochemistry. The first is biotoggles. This explains why genes turn on and off to make the proteins needed to handle different stressors, from the immune system, metabolism, nervous system, cellular repair, and genetic regulation. The biodials framework explains how genes are turned on and off over time to make the proteins required for typical function and typical development. And then how these 2 interact make up neurodivergent biochemistry, and how there are deviations in typical development and typical function over time. My hypothesis now turned theory in their paper uncited. You're not supposed to be able to say, hey, there is an active hypothesis on the pathology of autism linked to this pathway that does not say where it came from. So I contacted the journal that published it, and I was like, hey guys, that's my hypothesis in that paper. And they responded to me and said, actually, it can't be, because
The publications that they used were from 1967 to 2021. And I was like, hey guys, that's not accurate because they cite through 2024. And can you maybe tell me where this hypothesis showed up in literature prior to me publishing it? So I guess the author said, oh, they've been discussing the fact that BH4 levels are different in autistics for decades, so it's fine. Like, that is not a hypothesis on the pathology of autism, though. The cause being linked to that specific level. There's a lot of levels that are dysregulated in autism biomarkers. No one linked the BH4 pathway causally to autism and the comorbidities, specifically, especially prior to my work. And I guess the authors told them that it was a conclusion drawn from their results. And so they just emailed me back and be like, oh, we just followed up and I asked someone else and they said it's fine. So it's fine. So I'm starting to word it a little bit more strongly now. I'm like, guys, so it's the journal's position now that this hypothesis on BH4, autism and the comorbidities originated in a 2025 paper rather than my publicly timestamped 2023 publication and dissemination. I have millions of views on this globally. And it was quite controversial. I was called a pseudoscientist for a long time over this. And they're going to tell me, nope, it's in a 2025 paper. They're the ones who did it. What? So apraxia is not an elusive concept. They're actual physical mechanisms that go from the brain to the parts that produce speech. And they have never tested these parts for function in people who can't speak ever, globally, not once. The vagus nerve controls the singer's muscle that fine-tunes the sounds that we make into actual words through tone and whatnot. This is why selective mutism is linked to stressful situations. Also, an intermittent ability, this would be like gene mutations and whatnot, that can dysregulate the nervous system, cutting off that ability to speak at certain times. And only allowing safe ones. This would be like a child that can only script a certain thing and can't speak conversationally. And then there's a complete lack of ability where this would be damaged or malformed, at least in my framework. I'm so excited to be done with this image. I couldn't find anywhere something that had the cortical bulbar tract and the singer's muscle and the EBSLN and the nervous system all in one cohesive framework with, of course, actually being able to see how the motor neurons work and how they attach to muscles and they're long. I looked up where everything is anatomically and put it in the correct place, so I'm super in love with this. Took forever, but it's done. So I made a webpage breaking down the 3 types of nonverbality. This would be complete lack, intermittent ability, and situational. 95% of us have at least one comorbidity. A good number of these are physical conditions that cannot happen unless something is physiologically happening in more than just the brain. I created a theory on the pathology of autism and the comorbidities, and I did this to help us understand ourselves better and the world understand us better. This all started because I was helping my nonverbal autistic daughter, specifically with her comorbidity of being nonverbal. I realized we have system-wide physical comorbidities happening, and that cannot happen without a physiological mechanism. So I went digging, and I think I found the answer. That autism and the comorbidities happen at the same time because they're caused by a joint root cause, which would be gene mutations that turn a stress response on that doesn't turn off. And this impacts the body systemically. Autism is not just behavioral. I've had several researchers and well-known institutions reach out and say they're scared of their own work being stolen. And my only advice is to say it will. If you have something of value, other people will try to take it. That's true across all of history. You just have to prepare for it. The best thing you can do is leave a very well-documented, time-stamped trail that leads back to you, so that when the dust settles and people go looking for the first and the originator, they find your work. That's all I can do for myself. The world deserves to have it. If it's accurate, dig in. All signs will point back to me because I am responsible for this paradigm shift. And that takes a lot of trust and a lot of faith, but it's all we got. Princeton launched a formal investigation, as in I have a portal system and there's a committee being formed. I know there's a rumor going around that I was given some kind of cease and desist, and that's why I can't talk about it. I can talk about the fact that I believe they plagiarized my work, because this case wouldn't have opened if I didn't believe that. But as far as what is disclosed to me as part of the case, I won't disclose that. I know I'm not legally, contractually obligated to do so, but that's what you do when you make a professional agreement. You stick to the terms. If either one of us does anything shady, I'm sure the terms will change, but that's where we're at right now. Also, there are people going around talking about how this isn't a paradigm shift. Princeton wouldn't have put out a press release claiming a paradigm shift if it wasn't novel. It's not the fact that autism has comorbidities, it's what makes them comorbid, right? It's the actual mechanistic link.
biochemically that I produced or contributed. So that is what they tried to replicate and take, is the fact that it's linked to the biochemistry and the activity of these biochemical pathways. They do not, however, explain how these biochemical pathways having altered activity contributes to the autism and comorbid traits. That's what I bring to the table. And they couldn't bring that full circle because it's not their framework. It's mine.
Dr. Robert Naveau decided to update his model to match mine. This is the guy that created the cell danger response. Guess what? He now has a 3-hit metabolic signaling model with G mutations, exposure to environmental situational triggers, and chronic activation. Oh, does that sound familiar? Biotoggle situationally flipped. It's a situational trigger. Chronically stuck. Doesn't resolve. Genetically logged. Oh, look. You can't just update your model and not cite the person who influenced it. So I'm learning the hard way that in academia, when you're right about something, they don't congratulate you, they try to steal it. And that is their version of saying, you did it. The Princeton team easily could have reached out and said, hey, congratulations, let's work on this together. Did they do that? No, they decided to try to take it for themselves. Not only that, they made it a rush job. The project started May 24th, 2024. They used coding so results were instant. They had it submitted to publish in Nature by July 25th. That's 2 months. Same with Stanford. Oh, this is her model? Let's go for the cure. Someone from Stanford's neurodiversity project even reached out to me requesting my information, and I sent everything to them. They created a treatment off the mechanism that I said leads to the autism-specific traits. Did they cite me? Of course not. Naveau created the cell danger response theory. In systems biology, it's whole organism, organ, cells, molecular biology. He's operating at the cellular level. I was at the molecular biology level. So I was one step down closer than he was. So I was able to delineate the biochemical cascade that his was missing. Does he congratulate me? No, he just incorporates my model into his. Unsighted. Top to bottom. I had someone ask, if you created a theory on the pathology of autism, why do you not feel the need to follow scientific industry norms? And my answer to that is, for the same reason why when you build a house for your family, you don't need to follow the norms of people who build houses for a living. I did this for my nonverbal autistic daughter. I did it because I wanted to find the answer. I didn't do it because my goal in life is to be a researcher as a profession. I follow industry rules of teaching because that is my job, right? The job that you're in, you follow the industry constructs. But when I went looking for the pathology of autism, I followed scientific norms, as in I followed the scientific method. You have to be meticulous about it to find the answer. The only way to solve an answer in science is the scientific method. All of the social constructs around where to publish or what credentials you have, that's industry norms if you want to climb the corporate ladder, right? That's not something I'm interested in. I just wanted to solve the problem. Same reason why a builder wants to make sure their house is to code so that it's not going to fall down on them. But do they need to get all the credentials to become a builder if that's not going to be their day job? No. I'm not going to leave my job to be a researcher. I just did this thing, right? A builder who builds a house doesn't lose their right to that house because they don't follow industry rules for becoming a builder. They still get to keep their house. I still get to keep my intellectual property that I built. You can't just steal someone's house because they weren't a builder. Like, that's not how it works. I just got out of the meeting with the University of California, San Diego about Dr. Naveau's paper, and I can't say anything other than they'll be in touch and they're going to look into it. These meetings are stressful for everyone. I was never expecting to be the person to have done this, but I was and I am, and yeah, I created a theory on the pathology of autism and the comorbidities for my nonverbal autistic daughter, and now universities are trying to pull from it without citing me, and that is plagiarism. So the question is, where does folate and homocysteine fit in with my autism and the comorbidities theory? First things first, there's different levels of zooming in and out in systems biology. I focus on the molecular level behavior that influence cellular behaviors that make up the organs that make up the whole organism. The BH4 shunt is the center of the entire stress response system. It's responsive to and manages the biotoggles. These are the regulatory systems. And it sits on top of the teeter-totter MTR reaction. because methylfolate assists in the BH4 nitric oxide reaction. So in this MTR reaction, methylfolate gives its methyl group to cobalamin, turning it into methylcobalamin. Then it gives its methyl group to homocysteine, turning it into methionine. So when stress is detected, this shunts. And depending on what kind of stress, it can shunt either way. This will influence folate levels, cobalamin, B12 levels, homocysteine, and methionine levels all at once, depending on what type of stress. I've had several people reach out asking how I'm being so calm about the theft of my autism and the comorbidities theory, and the thing is, of course I'm upset, of course I'm angry. But one thing I'm not going to do is turn into the germ theory guy who lost his marbles about it and ended up institutionalized. Life moves on. I can't control whether or not these investigative committees at Princeton or UCSD actually admit wrongdoing. I can't control any of that. All I can do is say, here's the evidence. Here are the black and white timestamps that I did this before them, and move forward in what I do in the future. Because I cannot change the past. Do I want justice for my daughter? Yes. Do I think this is abhorrent behavior? Absolutely. Is it a huge reason why I won't get back involved with academia and I'm choosing to go the business route? Yes. But life has to move forward. So I am writing books and creating websites and raising awareness while I do so, because I am not going to let everything I am and everything I become just be someone who got stolen from. It's going to be whatever I turn this into. I finally emailed Stanford. I had confirmed contact with someone from their neurodiversity project, petitioned them for help, and then they came out with their version of a cure that lines exactly with my framework. For those of you who are new here, I created a theory on the pathology of autism and the comorbidities. It's since been torn apart and plagiarized by prestigious universities after academia refused to engage in good faith. They responded via secured server within 2.5 hours. And when I get a message like this, which has now happened multiple times, you have to set up like a username, a password, and then you have secured communication back and forth about the issue. They put confidential disclaimers everywhere, so I'm not allowed to say what they say, and yeah, let me go from here. What happens now is Princeton just traded short-term comfort for long-term infamy. This is not the typical response of an institution that is genuinely trying to figure out whether or not plagiarism occurred. They chose to put personal and confidential in the heading, in the body, and in the fine print of this email. They also chose to email me this the day after Christmas with a 7-day expiration date, when most students don't check their emails. Everyone knows I have children, and to Rosalind Franklin me the day after Christmas, while I'm trying to keep everything festive for them, is not ethical. They even chose to publish in the same journal Watson and Crick did when they stole her work. If they wanted to convince anyone that they were not aware of what their researchers did, the optics around this were not the way to do so. Their researchers directly tested my hypothesis that launched the creation of my theory. They admitted it in the preprint and scrubbed it from the published version. And it wasn't something they had been working on for years. It was published in under 2 months. They even had the audacity to say it was like figuring out a jigsaw puzzle in their press release. The thing is, my framework is withstanding time and scrutiny, and I'm going to choose to focus on that and let time do its thing and tell the truth for me. Because what they want is a reaction out of me. Their only defense left is to paint a picture of me that's not accurate, and I'm not going to give them that. I'm going to stay in my integrity, and I'm going to continue to advance this theory and to let the science speak for itself, because it does. My autism and the comorbidities model wouldn't even exist for people to test had I not built it. So for all these researchers to test it and replicate and create derivatives off of it without citing me is egregious, just unethical behavior. And the university standing by them just breaks all logic. There are history classes in which we break apart and dissect how stuff like that happens and how to prevent it in the future. Classes they teach. And here they are doing it in the context of, if you don't do things our way, we're not going to acknowledge your work is yours. How many times in history has the record been rewritten and corrected because of that behavior? The work is mine because I did it. Full stop. If the work is mine and they are using it, they have to cite it. Full stop. I don't know why they chose this path, because the way that it went down, Princeton emailing me that letter the day after Christmas, knowing I have children that I need to stay festive for, and banking on prioritizing that over defending my intellectual property. In what world is that ethical? In what world is that them genuinely trying to see if plagiarism occurred or not, because they don't want to be on the wrong side of history? Because that letter expired in 7 days. January 2nd.